Up there, you hit it. Someone hit it. Did you hit it?
I just hit it. So maybe we just start again. How about that? I will have you introduce yourself, Dave, for this brand new audience. You do that, and then I'll talk. How about that?
Okay. Well, welcome to everybody. We're finding out how this technology works, and that I'm glad we're now on the record, as they say. That's a media term. That's an important thing to mention for this particular show on getting media attention now. I'm an interesting person because I've been a self-employed entrepreneur all of my life, started way back in the 70s, and grew a couple of different businesses. You'd think of me as a serial entrepreneur. And what's interesting to me is I'm fascinated by all the technology that's out there and the different platforms that we have, and what you can do with them in order to get visibility of your message out into the market. So I happen to be riding a pony out into the field right now called the Cancer Journey. I'm a cancer survivor, and so a lot of my time is being spent helping cancer patients and survivors understand the cancer journey and bringing together a network of cancer coaches, nurse navigators, oncologists, and so on to help people on this journey, and finding that these platforms allow you a vehicle to get your message out there. And what I thought we could do today is bring in a media strategist, an expert in how you get your message visible in the eyes of the journalists, those that work in print and radio and TV. And I was fortunate enough to meet Cheryl not that many weeks ago, and just absolutely fell in love with her, as I'm sure you're going to fall in love with her today. She's a journalist. She's a media celebrity, on-air celebrity. She spends most of her time now helping folks like me as a media strategist, figuring out how do you get your message developed in a way that will have the attention, get the eyeballs on that message of journalists. So let me throw it over to you now, Cheryl.
Dave, thank you very much. And thank you so much for putting this together. You may have mentioned it earlier before we started recording, but you created this Cancer Coach Network, and you're bringing together people who are truly changing lives. And I think that's amazing. So you were able to start off on a Google Hangout with some really valuable information for your crew, for your tribe. And then now we're on Blab talking about this. But thanks for that kind introduction too. My name is Cheryl Tan, and I'm a journalist turned entrepreneur. So while you're a serial entrepreneur, I think I was like a closet entrepreneur. I didn't know. I had no idea. I was a journalist just from the very beginning. I was a writer in college, and then started in radio, and I really thought I was going to be in radio forever. And then a mentor said, well, I think you should do TV. And I'm like, okay. So I've been in TV for many, many years in TV newsrooms. So I know deadlines. I know what reporters look for. I know the stories that are important to them. And in June of 2014, so it's been a little bit over a year, I left the newsroom, the TV newsroom, and started my own company, a marketing and media strategy company. So now I work with entrepreneurs, and I take what I've learned in TV news to help entrepreneurs get their stories out there. So many of them are passionate, so passionate about what they do, that they feel as if just somebody knew about them, that their businesses would change. And I feel that too. So I would love the chance to talk with entrepreneurs, and this was when I was still working, and help them get their message out there, help them figure out how to find the right reporters to connect with. So that's what I do now. I was doing it then on the job.
And you're doing it very well. I've been following you on your Facebook channel and part of your e-course sharing vehicle. And it's just an amazing amount of information that you so freely share. And maybe that's a good way to begin this session, is for you sort of just to quickly outline what it is that a journalist wants to hear from a stranger. When you think you've got this great message and you think the world needs to hear about it, and you send it off to, you think, someone who's going to pay attention, and they don't respond, they just trash it, and you don't know what happened. So maybe you can sort of give us the background, and then we'll open up the seats and see if other people had those experiences, and we'll just interact with the people in the audience of what's worked, what hasn't worked, and see if the conversation can become meaningful.
That's a great way to start, actually. Probably the best way to start is talk about mistakes, because then you can see in your story whether it's something that you've done. Not you, Dave, but somebody else out there.
I've done it. I've done it.
Well, I mean, so when you look at news outlets, when I first started in television many, many years ago, I worked at a Fox startup in Macon, Georgia, the central part of Georgia. And we had one 6 p.m. newscast. It was half an hour long. And it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I'd never done TV before, and I was shooting my own stories and coming back to report, and eventually I started anchoring. So that was many years. It was like 20 years ago. One 6 p.m. newscast, 30 minutes. Well, nowadays, news stations have upwards of 9.5 hours. Even that station in Macon has 6-7 hours a day of news. So reporters have multiple deadlines per day, and they have many shows that they're working for. So the deadlines are real, and they're not going away, and they've got social media to deal with as far as posting stories and talking to their viewers. What that means for you is your story has to resonate with them, and has to do so fairly quickly. So one of the things that I used to get is mass emails from PR companies, mass emails from PR companies for authors. Wow, there's so many of them. And all you got to do is Google me to figure out the stories that I tell and the shows I work for. That I was a local news reporter and anchor. And if you send me an author pitch from California, I can't really do anything about that. So I guess the one thing I would say is, if you are sending out a pitch for something, is to know who you're sending it to. A mass pitch does no good for anybody. And if you've hired a PR company, I would ask them where you're sending to. If your PR companies are very, very expensive, and if you are soliciting their help, which is completely fine, know where they're sending your stuff to. Because chances are, I mean, emails are free, but still, you don't want your name associated with something that eventually will get trashed or won't even be looked at. That's not even worth your time. So number one is know where you're going, know where you're targeting. The second thing is these reporters, journalists, writers, bloggers, they all have audiences. So the second mistake I see is people don't necessarily think about their audience. So we talked earlier, Dave, you're in the health space. You're growing this cancer care network, and you're helping people live better lives, essentially. But you're not talking about finance. So at least not that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, it interacts. I mean, obviously there are financial issues about, drug costs and loss of income and so on, but it's not of interest to a financial reporter.
So the chances are good, at least from what we've discussed right now, is you're probably not going to reach out to a financial reporter and talk about finances and saving money. You probably will get better luck, better results if you reach out to somebody in the health field, somebody who covers health news, possibly consumer news, but more likely health news. And most publications, most outlets have that available to them, have someone who handles that. If not, there are outlets out there who all do health news. Like if you just Google health blogs or health newsletters, there are reporters and writers that work for them. The third thing is don't give up. Is sometimes I get emails and responses from people and they're like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work. And I'm like, well, how did you follow up? And they're like, well, I just sent an email 3 years ago and I got nothing. Well, one email 3 years ago will get you nothing, probably. So be persistent, but don't be a pest, and follow up smart. But I wouldn't give up, because if you give up, it's definitely not going to work. It's just like in business. If you give up on getting clients, well, you're not going to get any.
Do you, when you say don't give up, do you don't give up after a week or 2 weeks? I mean, what should you normally expect? We live in this technology era. You send an email, and if it doesn't respond in 15 seconds, you say, what happened? But with a journalist, they've got a zillion things that they're dealing with. So they get something from us. When should we follow up? The next day or a week later? What is aggressive and passive?
So think of it as a relationship, just as if you were a potential client. Think about what kind of follow-up would be useful to you. And just think of the journalist as the same kind of relationship. If they say no, stop calling me, don't call them back. However, if they write you back and they say, hey, this isn't the right fit, you say, okay, thank you very much. How about this story idea? How about this? So it's sort of that, okay, you didn't like that? How about something different? To give them an idea of them knowing that you are thinking about ideas that will help their audience. So if they say no, then you say, thank you, I appreciate your time. If they don't respond, 3 things have happened. Number 1, they just are not interested flat out and they've deleted. You have no idea if that's happened. Number 2, they could be holding on to it for another occasion, maybe for something down the road, and you're not going to have any idea what that is. But maybe they're just holding on to the story idea. I held on to story ideas for years. I mean, years.
Years? My goodness.
Yeah, I still have story ideas because I'm a writer. I hold on to story ideas for a very long time. The third is maybe they just don't know where to put you at this point. So you're either deleted, 2, you're put in a file for the future, and 3, you're just not sure, maybe not. But your follow-up could be critical. If you follow up with, hey, did you get my email? That could be a ding, ding, ding for them to read your email, maybe for the first time, or 2, for the time of year that they're doing the story. I mean, if there's a timely reason, maybe there's something that kind of jogs their memory and they kind of look at it again. But if you follow up with another idea, well, that could give them another idea for a story that they could use with you. But following up with another idea is critical. The work is on you. You have to think of one. But if you follow up with one, it gives them another idea where they can use you for a story.
So you're thinking strategically. I mean, what I'm hearing you say, it's not an email blast out to them. And certainly, as you said, no big email blast, but a personal letter that you've researched. Who is the journalist? Spell their name correctly, spell their station correctly, make sure that they know you've done your homework, get that out to them with a nice description of what you think the message is and perhaps the hook for their audience. And then you're on the phone because you want to build a relationship. You're not just trying to do an email back and forth because they're busy. Is that correct? Or do you do an email? Can you reach them on the phone? Would they take a call from you?
You could try. I wouldn't start with the phone. I just wouldn't start with the phone. I just wouldn't do that. But you can try. You can try anything until they tell you to stop. Think about, as an entrepreneur, if you took the no's that you got, you wouldn't have much of a business. So this is sort of the same way. One no is not going to kill your media career or your media attention path. But you will get no's. You will get no's for sure. You just have to be a little strategic as you make that follow up, and certainly follow up. That's important too.
And I like that idea, follow up with a plan B, so that if they didn't get your message correctly, you're saying, hey, here's another way we could do this, or a second message stream that we could go after.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just putting in the chat if anyone has any questions.
While you're doing that, I'm going to unlock the seats and see if there's anybody who wants to take a seat, because we've given some information now. It'd be interesting to hear from our audience, have they been successful? At what problems have they had? Share with us what's been going on as you tried to get some media attention.
Yeah, and that's always interesting, whether people have gotten attention before. A lot of times I talk to people and I ask them if they've gotten attention, and they're mad. They're like, no. And I'm like, well, have you tried? And they're like, no. So reporters are always looking for stories, and they will go after they'll go after what people are talking about. So there are chances that you don't have to actually make that outreach yourself. But at the same time, if you don't try, you're definitely not going to. So
is there a different strategy if you were trying to get on a radio show versus a television show?
Mm-hmm. So a radio show, meaning like an interview, like a local radio interview, there's still people. A lot of times I like to go online, because a lot of times they actually will say, hey, we're looking for guests. And if they're looking for guests, respond. And the only thing they can say is no. So I would start the homework online. This generation these days, everyone does everything online first anyway. And so a lot of times people will put stuff online on their websites, on their Facebook pages, on their Instagram pages, on how they want you to react, how they want you to interact with them. So, do what they're saying. You can always find that information and then respond accordingly.
I've noticed when I've made contacts with stations, they you call the station and you get a switchboard, and they often don't know who I'm supposed to talk to. And if I said, the health reporter, that might be okay, but I'm not quite sure if that's the person that I want. Is there a way of locating who actually is the journalist that you should send the emails to? Because when I do it on Google, I don't necessarily get everything that I want on a local television station.
So, well, what I would do, though, is I would find the station itself. Stations have a lot of information on them. And I think maybe that could be part of the problem, that it's so busy. But most stations have biographies on their staff, and it usually will say it there. So they're trying to make it easier. So you go to whatever, we can probably Google the station that you watch, Dave, but Google that station. There'll be a website page for them. There'll be a Contact Us tab, and then there'll probably be an About Us page somewhere where all of their staff members are listed. And a lot of times they make it pretty easy, where they let you email them, that person, from right then and there from that page. But their Twitter pages, their Facebook pages, all of their social media contacts are likely put on there. But even more importantly, their bio information will have the stories that they cover.
Yeah, the on-air personality was easy to see. Here was the person that I get to watch, but they have a producer that does all of the legwork and figuring it all out, and they're not identifiable. So do I connect with the on-air personality and they then take that email and shove it over to the producer, or do I get somehow magically connected directly to the producer?
So you can do both. You can reach out to the on-air person, or you call and ask for the health stories or health stories producer. And if there's not one, there may not be. There could be a special projects producer. You can, but you get one name, and then that's where the relationship begins. Then you can go back and forth with that person, and they'll tell you if they're the right person or not to talk to. Chances are, if you have an email that's short and succinct, they'll write you back.
Yeah, because I was trying to think strategically as you were talking and saying, okay, I know that they've got already a few weeks of stories all lined up. So I'm not going to get my message out next week. It's going to be somewhere in the future, and try to figure out, well, where's their headspace going to be a month from now that they might want to squeeze me in. And I was sort of struggling trying to understand, well, how does the show actually get produced? So I know, does that show producer start scanning for topics for next month, or do they just react to things that they've got in the mail? How do they actually figure out a show format that I could get my message embedded in?
Yes. They're looking at all of the avenues. I mean, they're extremely busy. And so, each producer is different. I couldn't tell you exactly the formats that they use or how they put it together. But if you think about it, their job is to share the news of the day. So they are honestly just trying to find the best news that their audience needs to hear. If you have that answer, they'll listen. So I hope.
Well, it sounds almost like the luck of the draw, and I don't like that. I want to be more in control, and trying to figure out what can I do to ensure that my message gets some attention. Here's our friend Scott, who got some input.
Hey, Scott.
I'm hoping that you can hear me.
You got it.
Oh, yeah. Terrific. Well, this is a wonderful, if I can just jump in then, this wonderful conversation. I actually am coming to this kind of the opposite way, in that some healthcare organizations I've been affiliated with are scared of the media, or they're afraid of HIPAA violations, or those sorts of things. So I've got actually a couple of things to ask. One of them is that your experience in terms of some organizations, and what would you say to them to try and get them over that hurdle?
So are these organizations, are they nonprofits, or are they association related to the medical field?
The one I'm thinking about in particular is it's a rural hospital in a hospital district. So they will send out press releases. They will do certain things, but the landscape seems to be so much richer, and in the 21st century, including social media and platforms such as we're talking on right now. But I've also had colleagues who have also been frustrated in terms of how conservative the healthcare sector is in terms of putting themselves out for press or to get additional coverage. It's a very narrow path that they seem to be comfortable with. So I was wondering if you've run across that phenomena, and if so, what advice might you have either to them or to those of us who are intermediaries trying to pull these hen's teeth from them?
I guess that my first question to you, Scott, would be what are you trying to get out of it? What kind of story are you trying to get? Are they groups where there's great change happening with their members? Like, for example, Dave's Cancer Coach Network. He's helping survivors live a better life. Are you seeing that change from zero to better? And so I guess the question is what exactly the kind of story you're trying to tell?
For me, the objective is community connectedness, to be able to let the service area, which is actually quite large because it's rural and not too bad in terms of the number of people as well. But in order to be able to set the message, set the agenda, let people know what services are available, to let them feel good about it, that it's the medical excellence is important, to get that two-way conversation so that the community feels connected to the local healthcare providers. In my particular instance, that would be the number one. And it would be, I would imagine, through community education and taking a medical health needs assessment and then addressing the needs of the community through social media or through the conduit of the press, the mass media.
So the way stories are told are through people. It's all about people. So what I would suggest is what it sounds like is you are taking somebody on a journey. Not physically, but maybe spiritually. And so if you can find somebody not a talking head, like not an official, but someone who has gone through that journey and is willing to talk about his or her story, then I think you have a story. Then you don't have to worry about HIPAA, because that person is on board and understands what's going on and is willing to talk about going from the journey from here to here. But then that person can tell that story from his or her perspective. Does that help? I
think so. And it can also be that people can listen in on this and think, okay, well, if there is a gap between where we are and where we want to be, perhaps what you've said, Cheryl, and that is find a person who has a personal testimony, is what I heard you say, and have them tell their own story, and that could be very powerful. So what are some of the best ways, do you think, that healthcare organizations can package their message to make it so easy that news outlets would just welcome them with open arms? Is there some advice? You might have covered this already, but could you repeat?
No, absolutely. Well, so you're talking about, and so I'm a big believer in organization, especially with the tools available to us now, that anybody has the power to become a media outlet. So is that what you're saying? And I think that's what I'm hearing, is if your organization can produce content. So a lot of people, they don't understand the power of blogging, the power of videos, the power of consistent output of material. It's one way that people, clients, customers, the media will know what you do is if you push it out. So it's a lot of work, but it is so important, is to be strategic in creating a plan to create content. Because a lot of times people don't know what you do. People don't know how you help, and they don't know how you help if you don't tell them. So, I mean, whether it's a blogging strategy or you do vignettes of your members, and you do that on a consistent basis every Wednesday, every Thursday, every Friday, it's how they will be seen. And then honestly, if you do make a media pitch after that, then you have something to show the media. Hey, are you interested in this story? Let me show you some other video that we have already.
Content with a call to action. And then do you have any sense in terms of how long you might need to do that as an organization before you realize some real traction? Is it something that will happen right away, or does it take forever? What sort of time frame?
Nothing happens right away.
I'm sorry, what?
All of this time. Nothing happens right away. It all takes time. It depends on how good your material is. It depends on whether it's the right material, whether your customer base or your viewers or your clients resonate with it. And so I think it goes with asking. I think it goes with asking a lot of questions and listening. So that's different from media attention, but it really is about getting the attention of people who you are trying to connect with. But asking them is, you ask them.
And I think Scott is bringing up that expectation issue, because there's, looking at it from the person with the message, they're saying, oh, if only the world knew about this, I would get the call to action. No, but these are all the things that would happen. And so you do the work, you think strategically, you get the media contact, you even succeed at getting on air, and then nothing happened. Nobody responded. You might get a couple of emails back, but there wasn't thousands of people who are now saying, wow, that was a great message. And so I'm wondering, is it not only the issue of getting your message thought through, but you've got to be realistic as to what's the outcome of being on air. What's your experience when you work with a client and you work them through this model? How soon do they start to have a smile on their face saying, boy, I'm glad we put a media campaign together?
So I worked with someone a long time ago, and no names or anything. And she got on this national platform, but had no website, had no way to collect, no Facebook page even. And so it was great exposure. It was phenomenal exposure. and this person was in the services industry and could have used that exposure to help build a business. But there was nowhere for people, when they Googled the name, nowhere for people to go. And to me, that was kind of a waste. So I believe that it's important to set the table, to have, and in this day and age, a website to me is kind of like the cost of doing business. So having that platform first at least lets people know where they can find you, that you're not a fly-by-night, that you have a proven track record, that you have a place for people to contact you. But yeah, I think it's really, really important to have a plan set. So like getting media coverage is great, and you can do it for the sake of getting it. And some people do, and that's fine. That's all good. But if you don't have a plan to capitalize on that, whether it's a community to pull them into or information that they can learn from and then get more connected to you, then it seems like it would be kind of a waste. Nothing's a waste in that sense, but you could help yourself more if you had certain things in
Is there
place.
reticence from the media personality to actually tell the audience watching the show how to contact their guests? I know the shows that I'm watching, they don't have a problem with saying, here's your email address. If you want to talk to John, here's his email address. But to go to his website, it doesn't seem to be mentioned much. And yet I know the guest would like people to go to the website to get the whole message and have the mail capture form and maybe a call to action of their product and service. But I'm not sensing that the media want to direct their audience over to your website. They're glad that you gave them the content for air to get people to come visit them, but they don't seem to be that interested in helping send their audience back to me. And I'm answering the question as I talk out to you, but I'm saying, oh, that's too bad. We should be a team here.
No, that's not. It's not their job. It's not. It is not their job. So, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has an audience that you're trying to build for yourself, that's up to you. So Dave, you have a fairly common name, Dave Williams. So let's say you have an interview on an outlet in your town, and people want to find you again. Well, they're gonna Google you. That's what everyone does. They're gonna Google you. So somehow you've got to somehow get up there in Google with your name. Or if somebody can go one step further and type in Dave Williams, cancer coach, your name will probably come up and they can find you there. But it's up to you. It's not up to them. And it's not that they're not going to help you.
But why couldn't they just in the lower third, Dave Williams, cancercoachnetwork.com, and then people could just, come and visit me.
You could try, but I don't think
that's my experience. They say no, and I'm trying to understand how they think so that you can work and give them what they want. But it seems like they're taking, but it's up to us to figure out what to do with that on-air opportunity. Hopefully, we're smart enough during the presentation to keep mentioning, oh, you can find me at cancercoachnetwork.com. Maybe they won't edit me out.
Well, I will say if you keep doing that, they won't invite you back. So remember that.
That's a good point. Good point.
Yeah, it's not their job to promote you. They're giving you the platform. And if you are compelling enough, if you show a journey, like for you, Dave, if you show the journey for somebody going from a survivor to living, and there's a difference from survivor to living, and I think that's what you do, then I'd Google you. I'd find you. If I was really interested, I'd find you.
And I think you're raising that point, is that the audience has to be really interested in you. Thanks, Scott, for coming in. Really appreciated your question. It's to you, your world is a natural world. You've lived there all the time. To people like me, it's very strange and don't understand what's going on, because I literally come in saying, well, you're helping. I'm helping you with an interesting story that will interest your audience. What do I get in return? And their answer is, well, you get to help me. And I say, well, no, I really want people who saw me to come back to me. That's why I'm doing it. But so I think we as people dealing with the media have to understand they don't care. As you said, they got lots of stories, lots of things to fill airtime with. They're looking for a hook that gets them whatever ratings index that they're trying to get. And then it's up to us to try and be able to be Google searchable. So get your website up there, do your SEO, do the things so that when they put your name in, you pop up on the list.
And it's not to say they don't care. It just is not their job.
Well, yeah. But that means setting our expectations. And that's, in my early days when I was trying to do press releases, it was work with the publicist, get the press release out. And then you got a whole swath of people that saw the press release and came to your website to get a lot of information. So I said, that must be the same thing with media. But it doesn't seem to be that way. They aren't really there to promote me. They're just trying to get my message to their audience. So I've got to figure out what I do, and therefore I've got to understand what that world is. And as I've said to my audience and say it again, the world needs Cheryl Tan because you know how to make this happen. People should be using your services so that you can educate us as to what to do in order to integrate our message. Because we all want that press journalists to pay attention to us. We believe in our message, but we don't know how to get the world to listen to us. So we've got to use people in your profession. I've watched you in action on your HR Weekly show, and you're so good at that, but you come across as someone who does want to help the guest. You struck me as someone who was different than other media personalities. I mean, you're there to say, and look at this exciting group of entrepreneurs that we're interviewing right now, and here's their story and what they did and where they're going to go. And then it was, I got to follow. I mean, you're like building a little call to action around your guests. And I wish, you could do that for all of us, because that would bring, people over to our messages.
Right. Well, that could be happening because as you know, because you're part of my Facebook group, is I'm starting a podcast.
Yes.
And I'm calling it Get Media Smart. So we can talk about all of these issues and help entrepreneurs or anyone really get their message out there. I mean, I feel knowledge is power. So none of these are secrets. They're not secrets. It's all about relationships. So anything I share is not something that you can't find anywhere else. It's just that I've lived it. I know it. I just know it. It's just sort of all I've done.
Well, this has been a great discussion. And, I just want to ask any of the audience to take the seat if they've got the last questions that they might have. If not, we'll just close our session up, because there's been an enormous amount of good, positive information today. It's very hard to be, hosting and interviewing with you and not have my paper and pencil to write everything down. I'm going to have to go through the replay and make my list of all the words of wisdom that you've provided. And certainly recommend to everyone who's watching the replay to, in fact, I should have said that. In fact, when we bring you back on, I'm going to do that at the beginning. Say, make sure you've got your pen and paper. She's going to give you lots of things you want to write out. Because I'm saying that at the end, this is what you really should do now. But thank you very much for sharing with us today. Thanks for coming to the cancer group just before this, and then opening it up to the general public to get their thoughts and ideas. And you've got Danielle asking what your Facebook group was, so you could put that in there as well, and get her to join into your Get Smart Media or Get Media Smart group.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's a sign up. It's all free at Get Media Smart. And while you're at getmediasmart.com, I have a 2-week Become a Media Magnet challenge. So I think challenges are really interesting because for some reason, when you say challenge, it does something to you. It makes you want to meet the challenge and do the homework. Really?
Makes me say, I don't want more challenges. I got enough challenges.
I did the whole 30 recently, and that was a challenge that was really hard. and I only stuck with it because it was.
That's right. No,
So-
I know what you're meaning. It just I'm a challenged person, so there's only so much I can handle. I'll be challenged by you next week, not this week. Can't do that.
It's a pleasure to be here, for sure. And thank you all. If you have any questions, you can reach me at getmediasmart.com. My email's on there. And then you can join actually both Dave and me in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
So feel free to do that.
It's a great group to belong into. Lots of people sharing what they're doing. And Cheryl is so giving. I mean, she's one of those rare people who have the knowledge and will give you a lot of it to get you using this material correctly. So I recommend everyone follow Cheryl Tan. It's important. So there you go. Thanks for coming, and we'll get another one of these blabs together real soon. This was a what do you say? This is a blast. This is a blab blast. I mean, gotta get the right words together. It was a blast to have a blab with Cheryl today.
Thank you. Always good to chat with you, Dave.
We'll
really.
talk to you real soon.
All right, take care.
Bye for now.